I've worked around rich people most of my life, and let me tell you something right now. Wealthy folks can tolerate noise, traffic, even bad smells if the money's flowing in their direction, but the second a working man reminds them he still exists, suddenly it becomes a community issue. That's exactly what happened to me down in coastal South Carolina. Inside this gated waterfront development called Blackwater Cove, 260 pastel-colored luxury homes lined up like a brochure nobody asked for, golf carts everywhere, fake Italian fountains, retirees drinking white wine at 11 in the morning like it's a competitive sport. And right in the middle of all that polished perfection sat my fabrication shop, ugly as sin according to the HOA, corrugated steel walls, welding sparks popping all day, diesel engines coughing smoke into the humid air. My father built that shop in 1974 repairing shrimp boats. I inherited it after he passed. And for nearly 40 years nobody bothered me because everybody understood one simple fact. The marina depended on us. Then the neighborhood changed. Old fishermen sold out, hedge fund guys moved in, and eventually the Homeowners Association elected a new president. This guy named Grant Holloway, corporate attorney, silver hair slicked back like a local news anchor, drove a black Range Rover so polished you could shave looking into the door panels. Grant hated my shop the second he saw it. Never said it directly at first. Of course, guys like him never do. They smile while they sharpen the knife. First it was noise complaints. Then anonymous letters about industrial aesthetics. Then landscaping violations because apparently my scrap aluminum bins weren't visually harmonious with community standards. Yeah, real thing they actually wrote. I ignored all of it because honestly I figured rich people need hobbies too. But then one Tuesday morning, around 7 a.m., I pull into the yard with a coffee in one hand, and I see 3 dump trucks backed up beside the drainage canal running along my property line. There's limestone gravel pouring straight into the water channel like they're building a damn highway. I jump out of the truck and there's this landscaping contractor standing there directing traffic, skinny guy with wraparound Oakleys and a clipboard tucked under his arm. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked him. Guy barely even looked at me. "Beautification project," he said, like that explained everything. Then he points toward the clubhouse across the water and says, "Mr. Holloway approved it personally." Beautification. That little word cost me almost everything. By lunchtime, the canal was blocked solid. 8 tons of crushed limestone choking off the drainage path that carried runoff away from the Marina District. Around high tide, the water started backing up through my floor drains. At first, it was just puddles. Then suddenly the whole damn shop turned into a shallow swamp. Salt water mixed with oil residue floated across the concrete floor, while extension cords hissed under brown water. My MIG welder shorted out with this loud pop that echoed through the building. Sparks shot sideways like fireworks. Then my plasma cutter died right after that. 15 customer hulls sitting in repair racks started drifting sideways against each other, aluminum scraping aluminum like nails on a chalkboard. I remember just standing there ankle deep in nasty brackish water thinking, these people really did this on purpose. That's the part that got me. It wasn't stupidity. It was arrogance. They thought they could bury my drainage system because I looked smaller than them on paper. By sunset, I had over 20 grand in destroyed equipment and 3 commercial contracts canceled because customers thought the shop was contaminated. And the crazy thing is, Grant Holloway never even came down there himself. Nope. He sent emails. That's what people like him do. They hide behind committees and wording and community initiatives, while somebody else takes the hit. Around 9 p.m. that night, I finally sat down in my office, soaked boots still on, and started digging through old property records my dad kept in a rusted filing cabinet. Most people would have called insurance. Most people would have hired a lawyer. Me? I wanted to understand exactly why my father always told me never to sell that land, no matter how much money showed up. Then I found it. One yellow document from 1974, folded 3 times, signed by the county itself. And the second I read paragraph 6, I actually laughed out loud. Because sitting behind my welding shop, bolted onto a concrete slab nobody paid attention to anymore, was a municipal flood control pump station, one that serviced the entire development. Every mansion, every golf green, every waterfront driveway. And according to the deed, that pump station sat entirely on my property under a revocable month-to-month land lease. Meaning, legally speaking, I owned the ground underneath the one machine keeping Blackwater Cove dry. And suddenly Grant Holloway's little landscaping project didn't look so smart anymore. Now before we go any further, let me explain something about HOAs because people online love saying stuff like, well, why didn't he just sue them? Or, there's no way an HOA can do that. Oh, trust me, they absolutely can try. That's the game. Most homeowner associations operate on pressure, not law. Big difference. According to standard procedure, an HOA board usually counts on residents folding long before anything reaches a courtroom because lawsuits are expensive, time-consuming, and honestly intimidating for regular people, especially blue-collar folks. A guy welding aluminum for a living usually doesn't have 3 attorneys on retainer and a golf membership to network his way through county offices. Guys like Grant know that. They weaponize paperwork, fines, inspections, vague community standards, death by 1,000 administrative cuts. And psychologically, this is where it gets interesting. This is a psychological trap rich communities fall into all the time. When people live inside controlled environments long enough, gated entrances, manicured lawns, private security, they start believing control itself is permanent. They confuse influence with ownership. Grant saw my shop every morning while driving past imported palm trees and million-dollar docks. And in his mind, that welding yard became an insult to the image he was selling. Not because it harmed anyone, but because it reminded people the town existed before the luxury money arrived. From a legal perspective, though, they made one catastrophic mistake. They interfered with critical drainage infrastructure without checking underlying easements and land rights. That's amateur hour stuff in property law. You never touch water management systems unless engineers, county permits, and title records all line up clean, because flood liability can bankrupt entire associations overnight. But arrogance makes people sloppy, especially when they think the guy on the other side doesn't know the rules. And the lesson here is, never assume the quiet working man is powerless just because he doesn't wear a suit. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one holding the keys to the whole machine. The next morning, I didn't scream, didn't threaten anybody, didn't march into the clubhouse flipping tables like some movie character. Nah, I made coffee, fed my old Labrador Duke, sat down at the kitchen counter, and mailed a certified termination notice to the Blackwater Cove HOA. 1 page. Calm language. Completely legal. The lease for the flood control pump station would expire in 72 hours. That was it. You want to know the funny thing? Nobody even called me at first. That's how disconnected those people were. They thought paperwork was just another bluff from the dirty welding guy near the marina. Around noon, I drove back to the shop, walked behind the building where the pump station sat humming away beside the canal, unlocked the service panel my father showed me when I was 16, and stared at this old industrial breaker switch covered in rust and salt residue. I remember hearing seagulls somewhere overhead and golf carts buzzing in the distance. Then I pulled the lever down. Clack. Just like that. Blackwater Cove stopped draining. The first 6 hours were almost disappointing. Tiny puddles forming near the cart paths, a little overflow around the decorative ponds, nothing dramatic. But Florida-style coastal flooding doesn't hit all at once. It creeps, slow enough to ignore until suddenly you're trapped in it. By evening, high tide rolled in hard, and the 7th fairway started holding water like a rice field. Grounds crews drove utility carts through mud trying to push runoff towards storm drains that weren't doing a damn thing anymore. Around midnight, I got my first phone call from Grant. Didn't answer it. Second call came 30 minutes later. Then another. By sunrise, my voicemail sounded like a hostage negotiation. Day 1 was mostly confusion. Rich people are incredible at denial. You ever notice that? Folks living in million-dollar homes will stare directly at a disaster and convince themselves somebody else already handled it. The clubhouse manager blamed county utilities. County utilities blamed the tide charts. Meanwhile, mosquitoes started breeding in standing water around the golf course retention ponds. Thick black clouds of them. The head groundskeeper, this older Korean guy named Mr. Park, called me personally around lunch. Leon, he said. Yeah, that's my name in this version. I think your pump station issue is becoming serious. Becoming serious. That man sounded like he was reporting weather conditions on the moon while half the course dissolved into swamp mud. By afternoon, homeowners started posting in the private community Facebook group. First came complaints about smell, then photos, then panic. Water behind several waterfront homes had turned this nasty yellow-green color because stagnant runoff mixed with fertilizer chemicals from the golf course. Dead fish floated belly up beside kayak docks, while expensive little designer dogs refused to walk near the shoreline. And still, Grant Holloway refused to call me directly. Instead, the HOA sent out an email saying temporary drainage interruptions were part of an ongoing infrastructure enhancement initiative. Infrastructure enhancement. Man, corporate language really is its own disease. Day 2 hit harder. Heat wave rolled in, 94 degrees with thick coastal humidity. Basically perfect conditions for biological horror. The algae bloom exploded overnight. Pools near the South Villas started smelling like bleach mixed with rotting vegetation. One family posted a video online showing brown water bubbling backward through decorative stone drains beside their patio furniture. That video spread through the neighborhood fast because rich people can tolerate corruption easier than inconvenience. By noon, the tennis courts were unusable. The marina parking lot had 3 inches of standing water, and the outdoor wedding scheduled at the clubhouse got canceled after guests complained about mosquitoes attacking in swarms. That part almost made me laugh. Imagine paying $20,000 for a waterfront wedding only to get chased indoors by insects born beside a flooded putting green. Around 3 p.m., I finally got a visit. Not from Grant. From his attorney. Of course. A white Mercedes pulls into my yard, tires crunching over oyster shells, and out steps this woman in a beige pantsuit trying very hard not to look at the flooded scrap piles beside the shop. "Mr. Mercer," she says. "My name is Claire Whitmore. I represent Blackwater Cove Residential Association." I told her I figured that much since nobody voluntarily dresses like a pharmaceutical commercial in August heat. She didn't laugh. Tough crowd. Claire explained they wanted cooperative dialogue regarding utility continuity. That's lawyer language for, "Oh my God, please turn the water back on." I invited her inside the office where industrial fans were drying out damaged equipment from the flood. She kept glancing around at burned wiring and rusted machine casings while I laid property maps across the desk. "Your client blocked a protected drainage canal," I said, "which destroyed my business equipment and interrupted contracted marine repairs." She nodded slowly. Mr. Holloway believed the canal extension fell under HOA Beautification Authority. "And now?" I asked. That's when she stopped talking like a lawyer for half a second. She looked me dead in the eye and said quietly, "Now I believe he made a very expensive mistake." See, Claire already knew. The second attorneys get involved, reality enters the room whether anybody likes it or not. She'd checked the deeds, checked the easements, checked county infrastructure filings. She understood something Grant still hadn't accepted yet. Legally, I wasn't sabotaging the neighborhood. I was simply refusing access to private land after suffering damages caused by negligent interference. Huge difference. From a courtroom perspective, massive difference. By evening of day 2, Blackwater Cove looked like a disaster movie pretending to be a luxury brochure. Golf carts left muddy tracks everywhere. Generators hummed outside flooded maintenance sheds, and residents started parking luxury cars on elevated sidewalks to avoid salt water pooling in driveways. Then high tide came back again. That's when everything truly collapsed. Day 3, man. You could smell day 3 before you even saw it. Sulfur, rot, warm sewage. That heavy swamp stench that crawls into your throat and sticks there. Around 8 a.m. water breached the lower-level condo units near Harbor Lane. Brown runoff pushed straight through French doors into marble-tiled living rooms. One retired couple got evacuated by county emergency crews after electrical outlets started sparking near standing water. The HOA emergency meeting got scheduled less than an hour later. Funny how fast bureaucracy moves when rich people's hardwood floors get wet. I showed up wearing my welding boots and a stained denim shirt because I wasn't there to impress anybody. The clubhouse ballroom looked like a war bunker. Residents yelling over each other, maintenance supervisors soaked in mud, half-empty coffee urns everywhere. Then Grant Holloway walked in wearing knee-high rubber boots under pressed khaki pants, looking like a man whose soul had just been repossessed. He spotted me immediately. "You've made your point," he snapped. "No apology. No accountability. Just anger. Guys like Grant think consequences are something that only happen downward." I leaned back in my chair and slid a folder across the table. "No," I told him, "this is my point. Inside was a full invoice breakdown. $24,000 for destroyed fabrication equipment. $38,000 in canceled marine contracts. Estimated flood remediation costs to my property. And then the fun part, a revised land lease agreement for the pump station. 15-year term. Annual access fees. Mandatory approval authority over any landscaping or construction within 200 feet of my drainage canal. Plus full reconstruction of the blocked waterway to engineering specifications chosen by me. Grant stared at the paperwork like it was written in another language. "This is extortion," he hissed. Claire Whitmore immediately closed her eyes like she physically felt secondhand embarrassment. "No," she said quietly before I even could answer. "It's settlement negotiation following provable damages." Buddy, the silence after that line could have frozen hell. You could literally hear water dripping from somebody's rain jacket in the back of the room. Grant looked around for support and found none because deep down, everybody there finally understood the same thing. Their entire luxury kingdom depended on infrastructure built decades earlier by people they spent years looking down on. The marina workers, mechanics, welders, drainage crews, electricians, invisible people until something breaks. Grant tried one final threat. "We can relocate the pump station." Claire answered before I did. "Minimum county approval timeline is 14 to 18 months, she said, flipping through documents, "assuming environmental permits are granted." Then she added the kill shot. "And during that period, portions of Blackwater Cove may become uninhabitable during seasonal flooding." I swear I watched the color drain out of his face in real time. For days later, the cashier's check cleared. Every penny. Construction crews reopened the canal under supervision from an engineering contractor I personally hired. The HOA signed the 15-year lease exactly as written. New restrictions got added preventing interference with my commercial operations forever. And the best part? Every future landscaping modification near my property now required my written approval. The welding guy they tried to erase from the neighborhood map. The following Monday, I walked back behind the shop at sunrise, unlocked the pump controls, and flipped the breaker back on. The old station roared alive instantly, engines vibrating through the concrete slab, while water surged down the restored canal toward the harbor. Within hours, puddles started disappearing. Within 2 days, the golf course dried out enough for maintenance crews to start repairs. Within a week, Blackwater Cove looked polished and wealthy again. Yacht parties returned. Retirees drank wine beside artificial lakes, pretending none of it ever happened. But they remembered. Oh, they remembered. Because every single year after that, the HOA mailed me a check worth more than some people's salaries just to keep that pump running where it already sat. And every time I deposited one, I thought about those 8 tons of limestone they dumped into my drainage canal because they couldn't stand looking at a working man's shop beside their paradise. Turns out paradise is a lot more fragile than people think. You know what stayed with me the longest after all this? It wasn't the money. Wasn't the flooded golf course either. Honestly, it was the look on those people's faces when they realized the entire community they thought they controlled was resting on systems built by men they never respected. That part hit hard. Because Blackwater Cove isn't really unique. You see versions of this story everywhere now. Wealthy developments pushing out mechanics, fishermen, welders, family businesses, anybody who doesn't match the luxury image. Then one day reality shows up and reminds everybody that society still runs on infrastructure, labor, drainage, wiring, steel, fuel, all the ugly little things rich people prefer not to look at during brunch. The lesson here is, arrogance makes people blind. Grant Holloway wasn't evil in some cartoon villain way. He was worse. He genuinely believed status protected him from consequences. That's a dangerous mindset because eventually people stop asking questions. They stop checking records. They stop respecting boundaries. They assume the world naturally belongs to them. And from a legal perspective, that's exactly how expensive disasters happen. One unauthorized construction decision. One ignored easement. One beautification project pushed through by ego instead of due diligence. Suddenly you're staring at 6 figures in damages and county inspectors walking through your flooded lobby. According to standard procedure, property disputes are supposed to go through engineers, environmental reviews, title verification, all that boring paperwork nobody wants to read. But confidence makes people impatient, especially powerful people surrounded by yes men. This is a psychological trap communities fall into constantly. When everyone around you agrees with your authority, you slowly start believing rules are optional for you. Until reality pushes back. And reality always pushes back eventually. I also think there's something else worth talking about here. Working class people notice things others don't. My father understood drainage systems because he spent decades watching tides. He kept old deeds because he knew land rights mattered more than appearances. Guys like him survive by paying attention while everybody else is busy showing off. That kind of knowledge doesn't look impressive at cocktail parties, but when things go wrong, it becomes priceless. So yeah, maybe the real moral of this story is simple. Don't disrespect the people quietly keeping your world functional. The plumber, the lineman, the mechanic, the welder, the guy maintaining the pumps behind the scenes while everybody else enjoys the view. Because sometimes the person covered in grease is the only reason your luxury lifestyle still works at all. And honestly, I'd love to hear what you think. Was Grant just arrogant? Or did he finally get exactly the kind of lesson he needed? And if somebody destroyed your livelihood trying to make a neighborhood look prettier, would you have handled it differently?